people usually focus on spirituality, the battle between the mind and the soul, and kind of forget about the body and how it integrates all that and stuff. And I know you bring, I personally know you bring a lot of your spirituality into your fighting, into your physical health and stuff.
You have to learn how to meditate while you're moving. That's the best advice I can give anybody. It's actually very easy to get to that state of mind once you start to let others, just like when you're meditating, you shut your mind off so that other things can come into your mind. So your mind is open for you to perceive whatever else it may be coming into your mind. If you can do that while you're moving and while your body is working, then you can let things come in to have some influence and control over your body as well. I use this for fighting. You can do it for dancing. You can do it for shamanism. You can do it for trance states. You can do all these things. But that's my biggest tip. Learn how to do that for people who want to get their bodies engaged.
Well, welcome to the Uzlaga Saga podcast. I think we're going to start out by, just premising the video by saying that we're going to start doing a series of individually focused episodes. And today we're going to start with the main man, Thor himself, and probably pose a few questions that a lot of people have, people that, know him through the internet. And yeah, I think we're just going to try to pick his brain a little bit, what it means to be a pagan, an animist.
Good. Yeah, good episode. And I guess we'll can put the first one out of me, so because most people know me already, but then we'll be getting to know all of us. So it's super important. We'll be the team for the podcast that everyone will see in the coming future. Okay, cat's gone.
Yep, very cool. All right, so how do we want to start this? So you want to start? Obviously, people are usually going to be here because they know Thor. That's going to be our largest audience who's going to come and listen and all that kind of stuff. So, Thor, why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown of personally how you kind of fell into this practice? Give us like a beginning of your hero saga, so to speak.
Yeah, I guess I made a video where I touched on this. Anyway, this is an old one. It must be 3 years old at least. But like everybody's transition, the 3 steps that everybody needs to go to before they get into paganism, the old religion, or the steps before they have the full understanding. The first step is just when you like the religion, you like the mythology, and you have this childlike understanding of the gods. I believe in the gods. I worship them. I'll pray to them. They're up in the sky watching after us. And even as me, that started as a young child. And I didn't grow up Christian or anything like that, like a lot of people did, but I still had those same kind of habits, treating the Norse gods like the Christian god, like big old figures in the sky watching over us. So that's the first step that everyone needs to go through. That lasted probably from I was 5 years old until 20. And then you start to get to the atheist phase. You start to understand the myths, you start to see the symbolism, and you start to understand that the myths are representative of certain things in nature. And natural phase of it, some people get through that phase very quickly. I didn't. I probably spent 5 years in that phase. And then you get to the final phase, and you think, oh, shit, like this is not just symbolism. It's not just, personifications of gods representing things in nature. It's very real. There are spiritual beings, there are spiritual entities, and it's not atheism, it's animism. So that's the path that I took 20-something years. But that's how I got into it, to sum it up shortly.
I love that it takes time. You got to be patient on yourself understanding it. You shouldn't be ashamed that it took longer to get through it. You did get through it, and you're here now, and you're telling others. So...
And there was so much less information. I mean, most of you guys here are old enough, and you've been around the spiritual stuff long enough to know what it was like in the late 90s when we were kids, or the 2000s. There was no information on this stuff. You couldn't find stuff about you could barely find books about this stuff, like what the gods represented, the spiritual nature behind these things, and comparing it to other spiritual beliefs from around the world. So there just wasn't that information. So that's why it took me, and maybe you guys too, a very long time. But today people can get through that really quickly, like in a year, because all the information is out there and accessible, and then they can have these experiences that leads them to believe a little bit more.
Yeah, I can agree. It was definitely tough then. Children's books were actually the best way for me to find mythology.
Mhm.
That was it. Because otherwise I was a little girl, and then in the early '90s with my little Silver Ravenwolf witch books and all that other shit, trying to put all that stuff together and everything, because it was just forbidden. It was like shoved in the back corner of some bookstores and stuff like that. It's a lot easier now. I mean, it's so easy now that there's an overwhelming amount of information, and it's really hard to filter through it. And that's kind of the point of this podcast and all the people that we have on here, right? Trying to help filter through the crap that's out there on the internet. So,
Yeah, there's still people who struggle, definitely.
Luckily, I mean, it's easier because there's plenty of people like you that have distilled the content down, which, it's that mentality that the more people actually focus on something, the more distilled it becomes, the more accessible it becomes. Then it just filters through society a lot easier. Yeah, it's very pioneerial work that's happening on your end.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's reached kind of a plateau a little bit, because there was a ton of people coming into it from 2010, when all the Viking stuff and Last Kingdom came out and God of War stuff. But now that stuff has kind of fizzled down a little bit. I notice it slowing down. But the people that are here are getting a much better understanding of it, which is great. But yeah, I think something needs to be done to make it keep growing, because I think the potential is really huge to make people more interested in their ancestry and the native beliefs of Europe. I think we can literally get every single person, every single European, we can convert them from their Christian beliefs or atheism, whatever. We can make them at least have some appreciation and understanding for the native religions of Europe.
So when you first started posting videos online and whatnot, I know you kind of took a journey on this too, as well, for like why you were doing it and that kind of thing, and then how it changed and flowered into something different, so to speak, and bloomed. But I was wondering if you can kind of talk about that journey, like why you started doing it in the beginning stages, and then how it kind of has come full circle now and whatnot. I know it's kind of parallels the other journey that you were talking about, but still.
Yeah. Wait, was it last week at the Sumble I spoke about this too? I forget where I said it last. What my motivations for it. It was when I started first. It was just because there was so much crap out there online. There was so much bad information, and I saw other people doing this, and I was like, "Oh, these guys suck." I won't say any names here on the podcast, but we know who they are at least. There's a lot of people really suck and not doing a good job, and I thought I could do that, and that's why I started it in the first place. And then it became a business, maybe a year into it. I liked the money that came in from YouTube for a little while there, and it just got a chance to work with something I love. That was the start. But now, for the past couple of years, I don't care about any of that stuff. My goal now is to unite people, to bring people together, to inspire them. That's what I want to do. That's my main and only goal with everything I do. So that's where I'll have to develop some new strategies to figure out how to keep growing it like it has been.
I assume at this point, when you're bringing that up, that it has to do with kind of like the village idea that you're talking about, then.
That's just the start. I mean, the village is the first step.
Sure, but
it will be, for someone who's maybe just tuned in, I want to buy land, build a Viking-style village for people to live, come and visit, live as close as possible to the old ways as we can. That's the only way that we can really live as close as possible to the old ways as we can. If we kind of create our own society, because our society these days is not set up for us to do that or succeed at all or do anything good, pretty much. So we have to create our own society. So that's my main goal, but it's like I said, my main goal is to inspire people. I can have the money to build one village, maybe 2, 3 over the next 10 years, but I want to inspire people to do the same. So we have 100 of these villages all over the world. That's what I really want to do.
The right people have to hear the calling, I guess, and you get all the good ones in and we survive.
Yeah, pretty much.
I vote East Coast Village.
East Coast, we can do that.
I'm like PNW. So why don't we kind of just go back to the basics and like show us like what's a daily practice for you on how this works? Like
It's that's I split it up, and I tell everybody to split it up into varies of importance and frequency. So there's certain things we're going to do only a few times a year. That might be the bloots, that might be some specific rituals, that might be some, if people want to get into any psychoactive substances or hallucinogens, that's up to them. Oh, that got loud.
That's
all right. Yeah, well, that's right. Well, he'd have to mute it maybe if he comes back on, but yeah, we'll see about that. That's speaking about. Yeah, so people have to divide it into frequency. There's certain things you'll only do a few times a year. There's certain things you might do once a month, twice a month, and there's certain things you can do every day. For everyday meditation, everybody should be doing that anyway. Different types of meditation with different sorts of purposes. Then the offerings you can do pretty regularly. If you live near the forest, you can do some offerings, leave some honey out, leave some bread out to the trees, to the animals, whatever, which I try to do regularly as well. And then there's just getting close to nature. Barefoot, walking on the earth, I do every day. Get some amount of sun every day. If I'm living near a body of water, try to get into the water and really feel that every day. Those are certain daily things that I do. That's, there can be lots more for more special occasions. But I always tell people that first, split it up as to frequency, how often you can do certain things.
That's cool. Do you have a community that you do the seasonal things with, or the bloots? How do you say that?
Yeah, the bloot. I think that they pronounce it in Old Norse. Yeah, different ways. Yeah, so lucky enough, this year we had people from the Discord come in and visit. Jaudas was one of them. He's come out here twice for Denver. We had a Heilung concert and the Vardruna concert last week. And we did a little brut at each one of those and a sumble. So great to see that. At certain points, there was a group when I was living in Los Angeles. I went out with them, and they did the brut a few times a year, and we'd get together for drinks and things like that. I didn't really like the way they were doing things that much. They weren't bad or anything, but they were not my kind of people, what they were doing. In Norway as well, there was a little Viking club. It was mostly like a reenactment club, but there was a few members of the Viking club who would get out and do the bruts and do these celebrations on the special occasions. So I've been lucky enough to have that. Because most people don't even have that. But it would be nice with more people locally that you can get together and do those things with more often. How about you guys? Anything more than I do? They are out there. There are communities that get together every week, every month. Have you guys ever come into contact with any of those?
Yes and no. Yes, but not always necessarily good ones. It seems like you have to kind of weed through the different communities, go in, have the experience, and then kind of out, So I get ousted from a lot of those, honestly, because I'm not about the love and light things and stuff like that. Like, actually, this woman had a problem with me using the word channeling when I was explaining Reiki. was like, but you're I was like, I'm a Reiki master. I was like, you're channeling the energy from the earth through you to give to the person. You're not inputting your energy. You're just the medium. And she just argued with me. She's like, we don't use words like that. I'm like, I'm not, it's not the devil. Like, I don't know what's happening. But I will say, after you filter through maybe a few, find the community that works for you is the best way to do it. Find what aligns with you and all that kind of stuff. And don't try to force it to work. Give it a good shot, but don't force it to work. But I have found a few good community members local, but I've found the best community honestly online, which is kind of redundant because like you want to have a physical connection with people. So like meeting people online, you don't necessarily, it doesn't feel like you make the same connection, but I think I have met people that have changed my life and I can't see living without because of the internet.
Yeah.
So found the community here, but search around, don't give up. The right ones I've at least experienced. I mean, I'm also from New York, so it's like a hot mess over here. The people over where I am now in Jersey, it's a lot cooler, a lot more accepting of things. I'm not dark or scary.
In this online space, I mean, you really have to make the effort to bring the community together because, I mean, with Thor, I mean, he's more than willing to hang out with anybody from the community to come around. And I mean, we've hung out twice now at these really cool shows. And, he's always super accommodating, always breaks out the ribs and stuff, and we go cooking those up. But I mean, yeah, when it comes to the other types of communities I see online, I see Thor's is probably one of the ones that's like the most grassroots and, actually hangs out with people that, come to him for information. And it's one of the more realistic communities, I think.
I think that's a good thing too. It's if you have someone who people follow mutually, or even if it's just a group or a band that people follow mutually, for example, like at least that's a little icebreaker, and it's kind of a much better chance that you're going to go there and get along with those people well. Like you guys, every single how many? There's a couple hundred of you guys now in the Discord, and you all like my channel, and you're all good people, and none of you get offended easily, of course, because if you got offended easily, you wouldn't be following my channel anyway. And it's that kind of thing. If you have I met the Grimfrost guys. The Grimfrost, of course, everybody knows Grimfrost. They like Grimfrost, so it's like you already know that they're gonna have good people around them. So at the festival over the summer here, I met all of the guys in there here. The sword fighters and the Bulmer fighters, and then every single one of them was super cool. They all watched my stuff too. Every one of them was super knowledgeable. So it's like if you have that community online there already, it's like an easier icebreaker to make sure that you're going to get along with people when you do meet up with them in person, instead of just flipping a coin and maybe you're going to get to some Wicca meeting or some Wokings meeting or something like that and not get along with the people there. So it's that's the one benefit I see from it.
Yeah, it's
When
a nice
I
bridge. Sorry, go ahead.
when I go to various different martial arts studios and I'm checking them out for the first time, if I move to a new area or whatever the deal is with it, I don't show up with my black belt, so to speak. I show up as somebody who knows nothing in any way, shape, or form. Usually in my street clothes or maybe in my white belt or something like that, lowest rank and that kind of stuff. And then see how they treat that particular person, someone who's new, someone who's just, there to try to figure things out with it and whatnot. And then, later on, the next time I go or whatever the deal is, then I show up in my black belt and Hakama or whatever it is, depending on the style that I'm dealing with and that kind of thing. And then see how much they treat me differently, if any, and that kind of stuff for what's going on there. And I take a similar approach to this type of stuff when I'm going and looking at and interacting with other groups of this nature. I come in as if I don't necessarily know anything or know too much about what's going on with it and whatnot. Maybe just know the basics of stuff with it and see how they treat those type of people versus someone who's super knowledgeable. And then the next time I go in with it and whatnot, reveal more if I like the group already or think that maybe I could get along with that group of how it is and that kind of thing. Because I want a group, at least personally, that wants to treat everybody with kindness and fairness and that kind of stuff, and is willing to help them out on any stage of the journey that they're at and whatnot. I don't want a group of people who thinks that they can't learn from the other people that are there and whatnot. It doesn't matter how much knowledge that they've soaked in, there's always more to gain and more wisdom or whatever it is that's coming along with it. So that's my personal take on some of this stuff too.
Yeah, that's important too, because I haven't experienced it myself. That's probably far more rare in the Norse community, people who really, really know what they're talking about. But I've heard sometimes people not be welcomed in those communities if they're just a beginner, for example. Like it's only reserved for like elite scholarly people and things like that. And if you're not one of those, then you're not welcomed, and that's not a good thing either. So yeah, it's what you said there. It's like a good balance between both.
If you were going to give like a TED talk, what would your topic be?
The laugh said enough.
Good question. The easiest one would be I could do like 5 biggest myths about the Viking Age, but I would want to pick something with a lot more significance, something to really get people inspired in their history and give them like a sense of pride in it as well, and a genuine interest to learn about the spiritual beliefs of their ancestors and all the benefits that can bring, and also the bravery and courage, because that's something we need today more than ever. So I would have to figure out a topic that would inspire that in people.
Very cool. Yeah, I was also going to ask you, talked about it, but when it comes to figures in history, through all your research, is there a group of people or a specific individual that you feel like you resonate with a lot? Maybe one of the reasons you even maintained an interest in this and created this community around, or something you just really, really resonate with, or maybe you're the reincarnated version of?
There's just too many. Lately, like I said, the past couple years, my main focus and my main goal has been trying to unite people and trying to get them together to work towards a greater good. So I've done a lot of studying about this and various historical figures throughout history, not just in the Viking Age, but any historical figure that kind of motivated people and got them up off their asses to the point they want to sacrifice their life for the greater good. Like that just seems like so far away today. People just won't do it. I think they would literally have to be threatened with their life to get up and off their asses and start fighting for a greater good. So I really study how ancient cultures did this throughout history. Håkon the Jarl is one of my favorite ones in the Viking Age. Harald Fairhair, he did some bad things too, but he was somehow able to unite a whole country and get a bunch of people off their asses who had been fighting amongst each other for hundreds of years and unite them all together under one kingdom. Yeah, even though I don't like everything he did after that, he really did a great job. He was like 22, 23 years old when he did all that. Other figures like Genghis Khan, even. How do you motivate a nation of tribes to basically come together and take over the world, right halfway across the world, and take over, sacrifice everything to do that? So those 3 are probably the ones that come to mind most of all. I really like Leonidas too, the Spartans, Alexander, and especially leaders that had something more than money to offer. It's easy to get people off their ass if you promise them riches, but how do you inspire them if you don't have money? Millions and millions in wealth to offer. So that's those are the 3 that come to mind really, who I resonate with most. But yeah, there are lots more figures in history who have done similar things.
Have you looked into, like, I mean, the first person that comes to my mind, or there's a couple of them actually that come to my mind that fit that don't have where there's money involved or anything like that for what's going on. In fact, they're both women. Boudica and whatnot would be the pagan version, of course, and then you also have Joan of Arc.
Yeah.
I mean, 17 years old, she galvanizes the entire French army and leads it for the first time and starts winning battles for the first time in decades against somebody who'd been beating them for almost 100 years in the war in general and that kind of stuff with it. So I've studied her a lot for that particular thing with it too, because she was very clear that she believed she had a divine mission, if you will, that needed to be done with it.
What are some? That's one I've ignored actually. Joan of Arc. What are some of the things? How did she motivate people? What was kind of her gimmick, or the speech that she made, or the promises that she made?
You know, she didn't actually focus too much on that so much as there was the way everybody describes her, even her enemies, which is what I find interesting with it, and ones that were willing to admit this, because some of them weren't willing to admit this, but even her enemies, the English and the Burgundians and that kind of stuff, they all talked about how there seemed to be some sort of like divine countenance with inside of her and that kind of stuff, this inner light that she was bringing out that made it so that way people wanted to go and like really wanted to believe in her and what she was saying and that kind of stuff for what it is. It wasn't even so much her message, that was part of it of course, but like how she made it sound and how much they could feel like what she was saying was absolutely true and that kind of stuff. And how much she had this divine conviction within her that, yes, this is what I'm here to do. And it doesn't matter what any of you think or say, I'm going to accomplish this goal type deal, even if I have to do it on my own and whatnot. And then for whatever reason, at least for that era, it worked really well. So
Did she have some kind of support to start out? Did she just come up from nowhere, or did she
came
have
up
like
from nowhere for the most part. She made it so that way she did have a couple of knights that were helping her in the beginning to leave her home to go and do stuff. Eventually, she had to make it so that way she got checked out by various different people and leaders that were doing stuff with it, and then a lot of them didn't want to do anything with her in any way, shape, or form. But then a couple of them started to help out and whatnot, and then as things kept getting better and better for her, at some point they kind of, okay, well, we've got Orleans back and that kind of thing, so we don't really need you anymore. We can crown the Dauphin and make that happen. And then anyway, a bunch of crap happens to her and that kind of stuff with it. We could talk more about this if you want in terms of some resources or whatever at some point, Thor. But yeah, she's someone that I would definitely look into and whatnot for just what she did with it, because she's the youngest person in the history of the planet that we have record of to be in charge of a nation's whole army.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is unique to a lot of people in the role that Thor is playing right now, especially when you think about ancient societies that maybe not ancient, but previous cultures that existed where it was like, yes, very male dominant, male led, and all this kind of stuff. And you get Boudica and you get Joan of Arc's. And it's like, what is it that is happening within that culture that has them completely move all this preconceived, like the patriarchal lead and everything like that, to go to something so different, something inherently feminine? Like, how do they? What happens in society where people splinter and break away from what's been happening to then adopting these new years that they hadn't seen those roles before? Like, what is it that is like inherent in the human's nature that's calling for that role then fulfills? I'm not sure if I'm explaining that correctly.
Yeah, I understand kind of what you're getting at for what it is. So in my opinion for what's going on with it is that courage is actually a very much a feminine component, because it's an internal component. What you do with that, the actions that are taken, that's the masculine aspect part of it for what's going on with it. And it's actually, in my opinion, to see someone who is considered to be weaker in general, especially in ancient time periods and whatnot, having that level of conviction, that level of courage, that level of, I don't care what is going on around me in this world and how bad it looks and how much it's going on with it or how much we're being oppressed right now. I have a job to do, and I'm going to do it regardless for what's going on with that. And so I know in certain aspects of things, it makes it so that way people look at that and they're like, well, shit, I can't be outdone by that and whatnot, especially if they're men with their egos and that kind of stuff. My mom, as an example, she was 5'1" at the time she was doing this, and she probably weighed 120 to 130 pounds soaking wet and that kind of stuff with it. And she had to do this for her training for being on a helicopter and whatnot. For some of the stuff they were doing it, she had to go over this large zip line area to get to where they needed her to go next for what it is, because she was going to be doing stuff on the flight as a nurse and on the medevac and that kind of stuff, right? And so the guys didn't want to go do it, but then they felt like that they had to after she did it, that it compelled them to do it, because it's like, well, if she does it, now if we don't, we're going to look like we're completely and utter jackasses, basically, and wusses and that kind of thing for what's going on with them. So I think that's a big part of it, too, is that, like, if she's willing to throw her life down on the line and whatnot, and has that innate courage and that much of a divine mission for what's going on there, or believes that she does at least, and if we don't do anything, we're going to look like we're the terrible ones for what's happening. It's our job to do this as men, especially that's how it was viewed in ancient time periods. All cultures, regardless, up until very recently, 3 things men did: procreate, produce, reproduce, and protect. That's what it was. That's what it was for what it is. That doesn't mean that there aren't other things men did. This is the core that binds everything for what's going on with it. So I think what it does is that it invokes the protector part of it. When they see somebody else that's like that, who doesn't necessarily need to be doing that, that goes and does that and goes, wow, even she's doing this. Why are we behaving this way? That's just my opinion.
You touched on like the 2 most important things that others was asking about there too, and I came to the same exact conclusion. To get people off their asses and do something about it, there's a little bit of desperation involved.
Yes.
Like you mentioned too, they have to be, okay, if I do this thing, I'm going to be punished, I may be killed, but going on the same way I'm going is way worse than that. So let's go do it. And the second thing is the bravery. Sometimes when you see everybody else, or when you see a woman or a little kid or all of the men in your tribe going out to do something, and then you're the scared one, you get called a coward. That's worse than death. That was worse than death in pretty much every culture before, a couple generations ago. So it's, and the Norse too. This was the epitome of Norse culture. The worst insult you could call someone was
right.
Ergi, like a coward. So it's the shame of being called a coward, basically, that it gets people off their asses as well. That's the 2 main things too that I think.
That still motivates people. That motivated my son actually to get off training wheels on his bike. My
kids
friend's
are braver
daughter,
than us.
Yeah, my friend's daughter, who's they're only 7 months apart, but Parker is like, her parents are Amazon, so Parker's my size at 11 years old. She's 5 feet, 100 pounds, all that stuff. So anyway, she was making fun of my son for still being on training wheels, and he couldn't have it. He goes home that day and he's like, Dad, take the training wheels off now. Take them
I'll
off
do it
now. And he rode that bike that day.
We need that as adults, If we have been calling an adult, oh, you scaredy cat, a coward, to an adult, that doesn't mean anything to us. But to a kid, it actually means more to them, like it did ancient humans.
Yep, and pretty little girls making
They're
fun
not as
of
conditioned.
on training wheels.
Yeah. Their natural brain is still on. We get conditioned out of that as we get closer to being adults.
So I actually had a question for you, Thor. So a lot of the times when people go to spirituality and stuff, they forget about the body part of it. It's supposed to be like a mind, body, and soul. People usually focus on spirituality, the battle between the mind and the soul, and kind of forget about the body and how it integrates all that and stuff. And I know you bring, I personally know you bring a lot of your spirituality into your fighting, into your physical health and stuff. So I was wondering if you would mind sharing a bit of tips about that, how you blend that spirituality with that physical side, with that fighting side.
You have to learn how to meditate while you're moving. That's the best advice I can give anybody. And that's how you can get the body engaged in your spiritual activities as well. It's not that difficult to meditate and get some pretty vivid spiritual experiences, especially if people want to use any Yeah, psychedelic substances is actually very easy to get to that state of mind. It's very hard to do that while you're moving, while you have your eyes open. But that's what I would like to get people to try to do, because with that you can make the spirituality become a part of your body too. Once you start to let other, just like when you're meditating, you shut your mind off so that other things can come into your mind. So your mind is open for you to perceive whatever else it may be coming into your mind. If you can do that while you're moving and while your body is working, then you can let things come in to have some influence and control over your body as well. I use this for fighting. You can do it for dancing. You can do it for shamanism. You can do it for trance states. You can do all these things. That's my biggest tip. Learn how to do that for people who want to get their bodies engaged.
I could just chime in on that. That's amazing that you brought that up, Crow, because with the absolute rabbit hole that I'm falling down with shamanic and druidic work, the core fundamental of it all is it's a healing art. And it's a healing practice. And when I'm looking at it from a perspective that makes sense to me when it comes to an approach, first thing you have to do is you have to get your body straightened out. You have to get your body straightened out because if your body is not vibrating correctly, not to sound like a woo-woo person, but it's true. If you're all out of whack, your brain can't even function properly. Like, how are you going to remotely access spiritual intervention in your thought process? How are you going to actually be open to visualizing things in the world around you? And a friend that I was talking to recently that was asking for, information on my limited knowledge. First thing I thought to tell him was just like, okay, it's diet. You gotta make sure that you're not eating what most people eat these days, because it is like a concerted effort to lower your ability to receive information from the earth. And you need to also make sure that you're doing a parasite cleanse, because that stuff builds up from the crap we eat. And you think about it, and it's like, I thought of it as it was like a joke, but it's kind of like your chakra, because it's like you think about what you eat, it goes into your mouth, and then it passes through your entire system. And it's like that is what's going to give you the alignment to be able to receive things more directly and easier. And it's been true for me since I switched to a completely organic diet and all locally raised meat that I can go out and pet the cows before they get slaughtered. I can see them every day. It's changed. It's part of the whole reason I'm even in this space right here. Opened me back up to spirituality. And it's you gotta diet, and you gotta work your body. Your body wants to be under some sort of physical stress.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. That's when I take on clients, the first things I ask them is, how much are you sleeping? What are you eating? How much water are you drinking? Are you dancing? Are you moving? Are you doing things like that? Because your body your body houses your soul and your mind. It's what brings it all together. If it's sick, it's going to infect everything else. And if your body is also sick, you're not going to hear the spirits you're interacting with. Because like you said, Rodas, it is a healing art. And it is a healing art because you get lessons from the spirits that you connect with. And they assist with you in the abilities. They help amplify you, like, so to speak. It's all based on those interactions and what you learn from them in that medicine. So you think about it, you're putting crap in your body. Spirits aren't going to want to sit there with you. Why are they going to,
I don't think they can see you. I think because it's like your vibration gets so fucked up, they can't even see you at all.
Yeah. You can't get through. And if your body's sick, the mind feels sick, it's going to be even more so. They're not going to want to communicate with the soul. They have a consciousness. They are an entity. Think of it as that interaction. If you're big and you're fat and you smell bad, nobody's going to want to sit with you, right? Think about it. Nothing to offend anybody, but you just think, just the god awful person, you don't take care of your hygiene or anything like that, nobody's going to come over and talk to you. So this is your soul hygiene.
And people like that, unfortunately. But yeah, it's yeah, I think it's true. But like, back to what we were saying about the Joan of Arc situation, I think it's what Tor does. We're all playing our roles here, right? Because we're not just going in a path, right? Like Tor's kind of like an awakener in a way, in my mind. Like I feel like he's waking a lot of people up or helping them remember, right? And it's like we're all coming into our roles as we take this path that's divergent from what society wants us to be and all that kind of stuff. But we're all trying to resurrect new things. But the role that Tor is playing he's fallen into is like destiny in a way, because it's like there was a void and it needed to be filled, and then that's the person that was there. That's the person that did it. And like for people like Joan of Arc or a Boudica or anything like that, the void was there, and as Nathaniel said, it's a matter of the person stepping into that to fill it. So yeah, that's the way I see it. It's like it was always here, it was always meant to happen. It was just a choice to actually step into it.
Yeah, and that's the key word you just said there, choice. It was his choice to step into that role. The things fell into place and he took it. And usually the one that's the leader is the one that doesn't want it.
Didn't think of that when I started it. Definitely not. But yeah, sometimes things just happen for the greater good. Yeah, but I don't know. Ask me in 5 years. Things are not going as well as I had hoped so far. Ask me in 5 years, and then I'll maybe have a better answer.
You need to go through the uncomfortableness and the resistance in order to come out successful.
Yeah, I'm doing plenty of that. Yeah, I hope that ends soon.
Have you ever actually visited a shaman or anyone, a spiritual healer or a spiritual individual have you ever gone to someone and actually tried to sit down as a patient or
I've had a lot of conversations with a bunch of them. I have not let anyone really work with me. Mainly because I haven't really found anyone. I mean, Christina has worked with me more than anyone else. I've not let anyone else really get closer than she has, just because I don't trust people. There are definitely people out there I trust in the world. I just haven't had the opportunity to meet them in person and get some of their time. But I've spoken with a bunch of people. Some I would trust, some I wouldn't. But yeah. To answer the question, I've never had a real long sit down with one of them to let them do their work. That's a difficult part too, finding someone you trust. How about you guys? Has anybody found something like that?
I mean, I kind of just grew up with it.
Yeah.
That'd be, that's kind of my situation. A lot of the stuff that you were talking about at the beginning didn't even really apply to me, so to speak, fully at least. I mean, there was still the journey I had to go through, but it was very much a modified journey compared to most people because I grew up in some of this stuff. We'll talk more about this when it's my episode, of course. But yeah, there's things that can be done with it and whatnot. What I know definitively, and this is not like speculation or guesswork or whatever or theory, is you have to, meaning the person that's on the receiving end of it, so to speak, meaning the person who's seeking out the person that can help them with it, they have to be open enough to it, and they have to be in the right space of mind and ready to do it. It doesn't matter how good the other person, they could be literally the best person on the face of the universe and whatnot, but if that person who's coming to them isn't ready for whatever it is that they're going to give, it does not matter. It is a complete waste of time on both their parts with it. Maybe that person can change their toes, so to speak, but they can't change the whole makeup of the person and whatnot. You cannot help somebody that doesn't want to help themselves, is the short version of that. Now, finding the right person is actually easier than most people think that it is for what's going on with it. I have found with most people for what it is, when that person, the student or whoever's coming to receive and whatnot is ready, the person that they need for that will appear. But it's only when that person is fully ready and gone through the prep work to make it so that way they can receive the stuff that needs to be received and whatnot, or to remove what needs to be removed, the obstacles that are in the way for them to make that happen and that kind of thing with it. There will be no other way of doing it. I've yet to find a single example of, not only in history from reading about these stuff, but also from witnessing it on a personal level for what it is. So I think it's just the way that the strands of fate kind of work together, like seeks like, so to speak, and it makes it so that way you have to be at a certain level in order for that person to be able to be there for it. And then when you're ready to take on the proper mentor or whatever, that comes along for that, then that person will magically manifest in your life in quotation marks, so to speak. And you'll know it when you see it. At least that's been the case for me. Not only for me being on the receiving end, but also for helping other people with it as well. It's like a big, giant neon sign above the person's head pointing down and saying, this person here for what it is. I mean, it's not literally that, but that's how it kind of comes across. At least that's how it's been in my case. It's been the case for the people that I've witnessed this for, and been the case for what I've seen in reading other stories and all the other stuff that's gone along with it. That's what I've come to find.
Yeah,
And a lot of
everything
those
that Daniel
leaders,
just
right?
said.
That's
Sorry.
just good. A lot of those leaders, they won't even, a good one won't take you unless you're ready. It's not
Correct.
like these ayahuasca ceremonies that anyone can just book a flight to Peru and whatever and do it. That's there are some of those doing it bad out there, but any good one will be like, they'll talk to you and say you're not ready. Like me, I've asked about it. I've had some people want to help me with it. Like, no, you know what? I'm terrified. I don't want to do it. But should I admit, no, you're not ready. So it'll come when it needs to come.
Don't really want to be responsible for a guy like losing every ounce of shit in his mind, in your fucking dojo. That's a mess. Not especially not a guy your size either. Fuck no.
Yeah. That'd be good. Someday.
Everything Nathaniel just said, that should be the TED Talk thing that we need to talk. Everybody needs to hear.
Mm.
You just basically spoke about my life, the way that works. When the right people were supposed to come around, they were. And it's reciprocated the other way around, too. I do have some clients that'll come to me. They'll kind of pique a little bit of interest, but then they're not ready. It doesn't work. And there's no hard feelings. It's not like it's a problem. It just, that's it. You're not ready. But the ones that it does work, it's invigorating. You feel alive, And I've connected to, personally, all of you guys here, too. So,
I was going to say, I'm at a point, and I have a question for Thor, but it's, I'm at a point in my life now, and I've noticed this since I was young, it's just like, just synchronicity does the work for you a lot of the time, and it's just about being able to be a part of the right movement. And at this point now, I just don't even try. I try, make the choice, but it's just like synchronicity is doing everything right. I don't have to worry about it. But did the Norse have a concept similar to synchronicity? I mean, I know they had fate, right? But like, when it comes to the idea of things kind of just working in your favor or just being advantageous over the moments that show up, was it just fate, or
the sources that we have of it don't show that they thought about it all that much. Of course, they understood it. They said, that's a lucky man, or he has good fate, or damn the Norns for cursing me with this fate, or just that man has very good hamingja, good, like the equivalent of karma. They didn't go on these grand spectacle talks about it. They probably did. I'm sure spiritual leaders in the Viking Age maybe opened up about it in a bit more depth, and about synchronicity. So, sorry, what's the word again?
Synchronicity.
Synchronicity. I think of the Norwegian word. So it's they didn't like have the records that we have of it don't go into that much detail about it, but most people, I'm sure, had a belief in it, but not they didn't like care about it all that much to spend a lot of time thinking or talking about it.
That's because you can't think or talk about it or any of that stuff. I mean, you can go speculate as much as you want, but ultimately what it comes down to is that life is a far better planner than we will ever be. End of discussion as individuals. End of discussion.
That's it. And it brings you a bit of peace too, doesn't it? When horrible things are going on in your life, like, oh, it's meant to be right now. It's not like you don't have to kill yourself over analyzing things.
As long as you're doing
what could I have done?
Sorry, I spoke over you. Go ahead.
No, yes, as long as you're doing your best, doing exactly what you should have done. You can't control all factors.
Yeah, as long as you're doing your best. Yeah, that's all that it is. As long as you're doing your best, the rest of it that's all you can do, So
yeah, much more peaceful way.
What
to
I
live
find
life.
is most people, unfortunately, lie to themselves about what they can still be doing or can't still be doing with it and whatnot, and so they want to not take personal responsibility. But for those who are very knowledgeable about what they're capable of, what they're not capable of, and that, yeah, I screwed up here, I could have done better on whatever it is, or no, I actually did give it my all in this particular instance and it still didn't work out. I find that those type of people, they're the ones that are able to make it so that way they have a touch of destiny about them, let's say.
Absolutely.
So do we have any other questions, Dave? Gotcha.
Yeah, I would definitely say that given the last few questions, Thor, what would you say, if you could, obviously, what would you say that you'd like to see change in the future, be it with the mind, spirituality, or whatnot of today's population, given what we come from?
I want two things, and only two. I want societies to be split up as tribally as possible. It doesn't mean we're going to go back to warring each other, throwing spears at each other like we did 2,000 years ago, but it means that we stick with the people who are most like us, and that's it. We don't have to fight with any others, but we're not fighting amongst ourselves either in that way. And I think that's the only way the world can move forward, because these massive societies, massive diverse societies are not working. They have never worked. And it doesn't even have to be about culture or race or where you come from or anything like that. It's just finding people that have the same values as you do, that believe in the same things you do, so you don't have to be fighting amongst your neighbors every day. And the second thing, I would like to see uniting, just like the Germanic warring tribes were fighting all the time. But when time came to unite against a larger enemy, they did. So that's the only two things I would like to see with spirituality and the world in general.
So more to get away from that big city lifestyle, that over-colonialism, getting back to more of the tribal, holistic ways of like-minded individuals between each other, regardless of backgrounds or genetic makeup, but more of, say, the six of us here today. All of us come from a background or a faith, we'll say, or a belief system that we can all tribally respect one another and raise, I guess, the next generations to come with those same sort of things. I like that. Also, going off of that, I like what you said earlier about when it was the meditation in motion. So sort of like going into, what was it? Bruce Lee said, the fluidity of things, to be like water. And that works not only with, I guess, fighting. Obviously, with fighting, it's good to be able to deflect and then attack, but with outcomes and situationals. So, yeah, we're not all given a easy upbringing, or we're not all given an easy upstart with the first half hour of this podcast. I'm fighting technical issues, which is typical for me. But yes, having the ability to take what's coming at you, change it, and maneuver with what you do have available. I like that. Given what you'd like to see in the future, we'll say, spirituality, if these tribes were to come back, would you say less of the monotheistic ways or more of the animistic ways?
Hey, that's the whole point. People can believe what they want. If we're in the same tribe with a bunch of Christians who hate us, the tribe's not going to get along very well. But if they are across the valley and we trade with them sometimes, no problem. We can be friends. We can work together, do everything. Yeah, it's just people have to believe what they want to believe, even if they want to be atheists. That's no problem. As long as they are living on the day to day with people that are on the same level as them, then it's just a success. There's no need for fighting every day. There's no need for arguing and all the bickering that we're seeing in the modern West, at least. So that's whatever people's beliefs are, they can do what they want, as long as they kind of don't force their beliefs on others.
It would be kind of funny. It would be kind of funny if everyone went back to tribal society, and these people here had a river spirit, and then these other people were worshiping the sun. And they say, your river god is pitiful. Like, it'd be good to have that come back. Well, your sun god is dark today. Like, that'd be fun to have again. I'd like to have that dialogue again.
Yeah.
My forest god is giving me a lot of berries.
A little bickering, a little bullying among rival tribes. There's nothing wrong with that.
Just blaming the gods for everything and yelling at each other about that. Just good fun.
Yeah.
I think we could actually do
we'll
that
see.
in today's age, even just giving shit talking. I like that idea.
I do too. I'm with Drift on that one. That's a good idea. Just totally just blame somebody being an asshole. Be like, well, because my sun god gave me more berries today. I'm in a better mood.
Some of those groups have nukes, so you gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll just start shaming people based on their religion. I'll just start doing that. Kidding.
Oh,
Joking.
now you take it too far.
Ah, fuck. Okay.
I mean, it's a free country. You can do what you want. I'll be laughing the entire way. Just don't get hurt. Don't hurt anybody else. It should be fine.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting though, because I've thought about it a lot recently, especially getting more invested in blots and practices. You do, like we always mention the cringe pagans. You got the cringe pagans just out there making it look awful because they're doing it on social media. They're doing it in like the public eye, the public forum, and it's so much more of a performative action. But then, when you have genuine people, like you'll have genuine Christians on the side of the road during this hurricane we dealt with, have genuine Christians out there that are doing things that they think that they should do in the name of their God, right? But then if we were trying to do something like that, name of Readiness or Thor or something like that, you'd be laughed out of the room. And it's just like, unfortunately, the space doesn't exist for it currently to be like integrated in society. So we can try to be as like hug and kiss each other's butts as much as we want, but it's like, for some reason, our gods are just not good enough, right? So like the Muslim faith, the Abrahamic faiths, the Christ and all that, they get a good run, but then it's just like we have to work extra hard in our community to try to like show that like, okay, like our shit is real and powerful, and it's part of our existence and drives us to do good things as well. And it's just we do need leaders like Tor and people who are practitioners to show like, hey, we're not ridiculous, we're.
That's all it takes, right? If the people know too many bad things about us, 1,000 years of lies have been spread. But really, our beliefs make just as much, if not more, sense as the Bible does, or in any other religion. So they just don't know that because they don't understand it. So they're not going to come and watch my videos. So it would be not just me, but the responsibility of everyone who follows the religion to kind of explain to the people in their life, this is what we believe, this makes sense, this is what they believed in ancient times maybe, but I don't believe it so much, and they just make sense of it all. And then you can get even the most hardcore Christians to say, oh wow, yeah, I like that actually. I know because I've done it many times. Just everybody has to kind of form those relationships in their life.
In truth, that actually goes back around, say, even to the cringe pagans. I hate to say it that way, but like there's some people that are born, say, monotheistic, and they're raised this way, and it's hard for them to drop that or even put it in the background and try to understand someone's completely opposite faith without, I guess, addressing it too. Oh, you have a sky deity too. It's just this. No, it's a completely separate thing. And when you say have someone who's left an Abrahamic faith and they found one of these cringe pagan ways, everybody hangs out in the forest, drinks a little bit of wine, and hails Odin with the sign of the Mjolnir. Cool, if that's what you want to do, and you want to dress like a Renaissance fair, by all means. I'm not saying that's wrong. That's just a tribe that I personally do not take part in. But when it comes to that, when they see your channel, they might feel, I say, threatened as well, because they've already left this and found that. It's hard for them to open up and say, hey, here's trust, here's thought, here's reason, here's understanding. It's it's tough for a lot of people to abandon something because it doesn't make sense, monotheistic religions or faiths, find something new and still be a little bit put behind the curve. Nobody, it's human nature. We don't want to be wrong, we'll say. So being proven wrong again and again, hey, we're all human. It happens. Nobody's perfect. So understanding that the monotheistic faith that you're brought up into is kind of a lot of BS or lies or just not resonating with you as a person, then finding something separate, it's hard to let go of that when you actually find something better or much more educational or even understanding. When it comes to, say, your channel, when it comes to the North Magic and Beliefs channel, which I first noticed you on, like, there was a lot of things that opened my eyes to things, and I've been practicing this way for a long time. It's up to us to take a step back, let that kind of mull over with us, and then find out if that makes any sense. So I don't know. I think a lot of people need to open up more to the thought of, hey, we don't know everything. We're but human here. So whether it's monotheistic, polytheistic, atheistic, we should definitely first have dialogue, understand each other, or at least try to understand each other. And if things don't go well from there, at least I'll have a better understanding of who you are when I go back to the tribe and grab a spear. That's just me.
Yeah, it has to do with all that. Faith. Faith is a horrible word, and I don't like it. Faith means that you believe in something without proof or evidence or experience. You're just asked to have faith. And that's not what we do. That's not what any pagan religion is supposed to do. That's not what it's ever been. Nobody's said, hey, believe this because this is written in our book. Like, no, believe this because this is what our ancestors told about for thousands of years. They believed it. You have to experience it too, but we're not going to force that belief on you. And that's the biggest poison, honestly, that ever graced the earth. Believing in things without any evidence. This is how 2020 happens. A bunch of people who believed in things and didn't have the evidence for it. So that's and it's been with religion. People have done horrible things because of that, because of things that they believe to be true, but not knowing the difference between faith and fact. So they feel it's okay to kill others because of that, and that's happened for a very, very long time.
What you're all kind of touching on there is something that I would refer to as negative knowledge. It means knowledge that they have to unlearn first before they can even move forward to gain real knowledge and understanding of something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or generational.
Sure. You're digging yourself out of a hole for what's going on with it to begin with, for what's happening with it. And the generational part, what is it that you're talking about? It's a disease that's passed on from one generation to the next from a belief that was put on them that they don't necessarily understand or whatever the deal is. And people like can do silly things with it for what's happening. I know of somebody personally who only learned a few years ago that the reason why, they were cutting the corners of the ham and whatnot was because the oven that their grandmother had was too small to fit the entire thing in with it, not knowing why they were even doing it, but just doing it because that's what grandma
Carrying
did.
on those generational rituals, even though we've definitely expanded the oven by now. Right.
Right.
Right. Expanding our
It
consciousness.
doesn't even have to be something that's this big magical thing or like big world view that changes everything with it. It can even be tiny shit like that we pass on that we don't even realize.
It tastes better when you cut it like that.
That's amazing. That broke me a little bit. That's good. It just reminds me of all the crazy shit my grandmother used to do. So, go ahead.
That was it. That was the whole point. It was like, it doesn't even have to be something that's a big belief or whatever. It doesn't even have to be about religion or whatever. It can just be something as simple as that.
But like, honestly, I like that analogy. Yes, it could be something as simple as, why did great-grandmother cut 4 corners of the ham before, cooking it? Obviously, it didn't fit in the oven, but you don't know that generations later unless you could speak back with the elders. When it comes to us in today's age and expanding our consciousness, expanding our education, we don't have to limit that and cut the corners off of stuff. We don't have to only settle for the corners or scraps either. Like, it's up to us to break those generational curses that were pushed down upon us A lot of religions these days, we'll say main religions, like to pigeonhole that stuff. They like to put it within the picture frame. Well, as a pagan, heathen, animist, whichever you want to call, we're all basically the same when it comes to this. There's no dialing down. Like, it is what is and always will be. Like, when I see that which is around us, every bit of it has a part to play. It's not a simple book which I have to stare down at. By doing these things, it limits our view of what nature actually is. Above, below, left, right. It's not a two-dimensional sort of thing. So I love having conversations with persons like yourself that are no longer cutting the corners of those hams, but expanding that area of thought process.
I really like that. You're limited by looking down at the book. You're not seeing what's
Right.
around you. You're not seeing nature in its form actually trying to scream at you and teach you lessons. I really
Right.
like that.
In truth, it's
That
very
needs to be a
simple to read
poster.
between the lines, taking the book out of the picture. When you understand that which is, our biology is made up of that which is
No,
around
you're
us.
fine. You're fine. You're the exception, Nathaniel.
But no, like it's easy to read between the lines when you understand that which is around you, that which sustains us, that which our bodies are a makeup of. But when you take into the thought of like nitrogen, hydrogen, helium, carbon, these sort of things, that makes us up. That is also what makes this around me up. That is also what makes up that which we don't understand. So by, I guess, understanding those to a better sense, we no longer have to look at it through this spyglass. We can actually just be a part of and allow it to be more of a part of ourselves. Getting off topic there.
Oh, that was sad.
I have one question. What do you guys think would happen if Scandinavia and all the Germanic nations adopted the old gods back? What do you think would happen?
I would love to see that, but I don't think that would be a possibility. Sadly.
Why not?
Probably even stronger attacks from the outside forces. The powerful organizations who really own the world probably would attack Scandinavia even more.
I think in a way it never really left that area to a certain extent. I mean, they're not outwardly doing stuff with the gods per se or anything like that, but that area, at least for European, for sure, is some of the most nature oriented group of people and loving it and going out and doing stuff with it and all that other stuff for what's going on with it. I mean, a lot of the stories that we even have around Christmas time and other Christian traditions and that kind of stuff clearly have nothing to do with the desert for which these stories originally came out of, and it has to do with other things with it. So they never even killed it off completely. It's just been subverted and underpinned, so to speak, and had to go underground for what it is. But I also think, based upon what we've been seeing here, the entire point of this podcast, for what's going on with it and other parts around the world, that this is unequivocally true. And it's not like there's large numbers yet, but something's happening to where the old ways are starting to reemerge, so to speak, the old spirituality all over Europe and the United States and Canada and that kind of stuff. And I think it's because, one particular paradigm is clearly not working anymore and is literally killing the earth and is dying, making things die. And so something else has to change quickly or be birthed out of it for what's going on with it. And I'm not saying that everything's going to happen overnight, so to speak, but, from a generational perspective, from a long-term view of thousands of years and whatnot, it can be done very quickly here, believe it or not. I mean, not necessarily in our lifetimes, but, in a generation or two after ours, it might be very possible that we see not the entirety of it, but a huge section of it going back that particular way and being more in balance. But it all depends on what people choose now, so to speak. So, yeah.
I think a lot about India, because India is basically, it's the closest large country that follows their religion closest to that of the Norse. And India is not nice at all. There's some very beautiful parts, but I would hope that if Scandinavia or anywhere in the world returned to their old native religions, it would be just a thriving society. But then we can point to India. Okay, India is not the best place in the world. So I don't know what could... Has something happened? Was it because they got robbed of all their resources by the British, or was it because they strayed too far away from their native beliefs, or is it not quite? I know it's changed a lot. It's not the original type of Hinduism or Dharma that was practiced 2,000 years ago. I wonder a lot about what went wrong there, because that would maybe happen the same thing with Scandinavia. I don't know.
Perhaps, but I would also counter and say if you look at a place like Japan, who has their Shinto beliefs, even if only about 5 to 10% of them claim that they're of Shinto origin in any way, shape, or form, their entire culture, just about, regardless of whether they understand it or not, is from Shinto. The taking off the shoes before you get in the house, part of Shinto in a kind of roundabout way. Everything they do, regardless in terms of their cultural beliefs and that kind of stuff, still so ingrained for what's going into them that they bathe before they go into the hot spring and whatnot. That's part of Shinto for what it is. There's so many things that they do they don't even recognize because it's just Japanese culture that they do with it that goes back to that. You know, I'm not saying Japan's a perfect place or anything like that, but they're doing pretty well in comparison to, say, India for a pagan tradition, if you will, that still does a lot of their stuff regardless of whether they understand it or not, you know? So I'm saying we see two different paths that could be taken right next to each other on that part of the world, perhaps, and whatnot. That's just my counter to...
Yeah, a good comparison. Because other than that, we don't have full countries. I mean, we have little tribes that are practicing their native religions, but basically every country has gone to monotheism of some sort, but they still retain a lot of their native cultures. So they haven't lost it all. So that's a really good point.
When speaking of India, I mean, this might be a little bit controversial coming from me, but my thought isn't necessarily what went wrong with them straying so far from it, but in modernization, what may have, I guess, gone right with the number of people. You know, obviously in cities, it's kind of hard to provide these resources without getting into the agricultural ways of society today. With less and less people, tribal people, the rural areas and such like that, it's much easier to live a life where you can homestead, farm, grow your own crops and such. India has more than 1 billion people in it. Now, granted, it's a very large area, but I've seen some of the slums. I've seen some of the ghettos, we'll say, of Southeast Asia and all these sort of areas. In my eyes, it may be not necessarily what is wrong because, you know, as Nathaniel was saying, even these Asian cultures still have a lot ingrained in their everyday life. But because of us living much longer lives now, being able to procreate and raise children, the population today is far, far superior than what it was when we first started these religions. Some of them even 9,000 years ago or more. Given the area of that land and the percentage of people that's increased, there's in my eyes, a possibility that maybe we should go back to the old ways. Now, I'm not trying to, you know, be like Thanos or anything like that, but I do think that we should kind of take it down a notch. We only have one planet. We only have, you know, the gods that sustain us, and it'd be fool of us to think that we can overpower them. What be it the river, the sun, the stream, the moon, all these different gods that we hail, they have their own ways. And if you put 1 billion people on a single stream, you might want to say goodbye to that stream.
Yeah, that could be the downfall of any culture, no matter how healthy and great they are. If the population gets too much, it's hard to be spiritual and have respect for nature when your grandparents had a small village here, but now it's a town of millions of people. It's hard to connect with the nature then.
Right, definitely. I think of that when in reference to, say, the Ganges, and, you know, it's a beautiful place. It's extremely spiritual to those that are around it. But today it's so extremely polluted. Like they're still, practicing the old ways of sometimes cremation and sending the body out, or just using it for bathing and washing. If you live downstream of the Ganges, you could end up very, very sick just doing your natural ritual because, the mass amount of people that are continuing that ritual upstream.
Well, there used to be another river further north called the Saraswati River. The Saraswati River no longer exists.
Yeah, exactly.
For what was happening with it. It dried up way
Right.
old ago, thousands of years ago, and that kind of stuff. But that had to do with certain things that people were doing, as well as climate change.
Climate change, diversion
what seems
efforts,
to
and
be
all that.
Yeah.
Let's get back to nature.
Good. Yeah, we got well over an hour now. Any other questions or topics?
I think we're good.
I think this is a good place to end it then.
All right, we could call it. We'll end it where Dhrif said, "Return to nature." That's a good.